Have you ever felt lost facing a big decision and wished for a clear sign from God? What if that guidance wasn't a booming voice from the heavens, but a quiet stirring within your own heart? Welcome to the Heart of Catholicism YouTube channel, the Catholic path to peace, where God's faith changes our lives. Saint Ignatius of Loyola, born in 1491 in the Basque region of Spain, was not initially a man of God. He was a soldier, a courtier, driven by worldly values like honor, ambition, and the pursuit of military glory. His life was defined by the battlefield, not the chapel. However, his entire worldview was shattered when a cannonball severely wounded him during the Battle of Pamplona. This moment of physical brokenness became the catalyst for a profound spiritual awakening. During his long and painful recovery, with no tales of chivalry to read, Ignatius turned to the only books available, a life of Christ and a collection of stories about the saints. As he read, he began a deep inner struggle, questioning the very purpose and direction of his life. He started to notice a fascinating pattern in his own soul. When he daydreamed of military fame and romantic conquests, the initial excitement would fade, leaving him feeling restless and empty. But when he imagined dedicating his life to God, following the example of the saints, he felt a deep and lasting sense of peace and joy. These initial observations of his inner state would become the bedrock of his teachings on discernment. This period of reflection marked his complete spiritual conversion. In 1540, after years of study and prayer, Ignatius founded the Society of Jesus, more commonly known as the Jesuits. This new religious order placed a strong emphasis on education, missionary work, and deep spiritual formation. Their commitment to combining intellectual rigor with spiritual depth led to the establishment of schools, colleges, and universities across Europe and soon across the entire globe. Ignatius's influence, however, extends far beyond the institutions he helped create. His profound approach to spiritual growth, decision-making, and leadership continues to shape education, ethics, and personal development for people of all faiths worldwide. So, what exactly is this discernment in Ignatian spirituality? At its core, discernment is the art of recognizing and interpreting the inner movements of the human heart to understand God's will and guidance in our lives. These movements aren't just fleeting feelings. They include our thoughts, emotions, desires, and impulses, everything that subtly shapes our decisions and actions day by day. It's crucial to understand that the discernment of spirits is not about waiting for a supernatural sign or hearing a mystical voice from the clouds. Instead, it is a practical, attentive practice. It involves carefully paying attention to how different choices, thoughts, or potential paths affect our inner state. Does a particular thought bring you lasting peace, greater freedom, and a stronger sense of purpose? Or does it leave you feeling anxious, constrained, and confused? Ignatius believed that God actively communicates through these inner experiences, gently guiding us toward choices that lead to deeper love, truth, and service to others. This makes Ignatian discernment fundamentally different from ordinary decision-making. While secular decision-making often prioritizes logic, efficiency, or simply personal preference, Ignatian discernment integrates reason with prayerful reflection. It doesn't ask you to abandon logic. It asks you to broaden your perspective. It considers not only what seems practical on the surface, but also what resonates with your deepest values and your unique spiritual calling. In this tradition, discernment is a deeply relational process. It operates on the beautiful assumption that God is not a distant, passive observer, but an active, loving presence deeply involved in the fabric of our everyday lives. To help people cultivate this spiritual awareness, Saint Ignatius developed the spiritual exercises. These are not just a collection of prayers, but a structured program of meditations, prayers, and contemplative practices designed to help individuals grow in spiritual freedom and self-knowledge. The exercises are typically undertaken over an extended period, such as a multi-day silent retreat or a retreat in daily life, spanning several months. The ultimate goal of the spiritual exercises is not mere self-improvement. It is profound spiritual transformation. Through guided reflection on themes like our own lives, the nature of sin, God's infinite mercy, and our ultimate purpose, participants learn to recognize the subtle motivations and attachments that drive their behavior. This newfound awareness allows them to unmask their own self-deceptions and make choices with greater clarity, freedom, and integrity. Prayer is the heart and soul of the exercises, often taking the form of imaginative contemplation. Ignatius encouraged people to use their imagination to place themselves directly within gospel scenes to see Jesus' face, hear his voice, and feel the ground beneath their feet. He believed that engaging the senses and the imagination helps us connect with spiritual truths, not just intellectually, but emotionally and personally, making them real and transformative. Over time, practicing the exercises trains a person to notice the subtle inner movements of their soul, developing the skill to discern which desires lead toward God and spiritual growth, and which ones lead away. Within this framework, two key concepts are essential: spiritual consolation and spiritual desolation. Spiritual consolation refers to any inner experience that increases faith, hope, and love. It's a movement of the heart toward God. This can manifest as a sense of inner peace, clarity, gratitude, or a feeling of deep connection with God and others. It's the feeling of being aligned with your true purpose. Spiritual desolation, on the other hand, is the opposite. It's a movement away from God that involves feelings of restlessness, anxiety, discouragement, or spiritual dryness. It can show up as confusion, a lack of motivation, or a painful sense of being distant from God and from meaning itself. Desolation is the darkness that clouds the soul and makes prayer feel like a chore. However, Ignatius taught a crucial lesson. We should not interpret these states superficially. Consolation is not always a sign that you're doing everything right, and desolation is certainly not a sign of failure or God's disapproval. Sometimes consolation can be a temptation to spiritual pride, while desolation can be a call to deeper trust and perseverance. Instead of judging them, we should see these interior movements as valuable information. They are spiritual data points that tell us what is happening within our souls. By learning to recognize these patterns of consolation and desolation, we can better understand which choices align with our truest selves and which lead us away from spiritual health and growth. To help navigate these inner states, Saint Ignatius developed a set of practical rules for discernment. These are not rigid formulas, but wise guidelines to help people interpret their inner experiences correctly. The rules provide a framework for recognizing the movements that draw us closer to God versus those that are temptations from the enemy of our human nature, which lead to fear, ego, isolation, and despair. One of the most important principles is how to act in different spiritual seasons. During times of spiritual consolation and peace, Ignatius advises us to be grateful and to store up that strength, preparing for future challenges. Conversely, during times of spiritual desolation, he strongly encourages us not to make any major life changes. Instead, we should remain firm in the good decisions and commitments we made during times of clarity and consolation. Ignatius also emphasized the importance of understanding spiritual resistance. These are the inner voices that discourage growth, twist reality, and promote despair. They are the subtle whispers that say, "You're not good enough. This is too hard," or "What's the point?" Discernment involves learning to identify these deceptive voices and respond to them with patience, self-knowledge, and a deep trust in God's unwavering love, rather than giving into fear. These rules are timeless tools designed to cultivate spiritual wisdom, resilience, and a robust faith. Crucially, Ignatian discernment is not something reserved for monks in a monastery or for monumental life decisions. It is meant to be practiced in the nitty-gritty of our daily lives. It can be applied to decisions about your career, your relationships, how you spend your time, and how you engage with your community. It helps you find God in the ordinary. In moments of uncertainty, whether big or small, discernment encourages a simple but radical act: to slow down. Instead of reacting impulsively based on pressure or emotion, we are invited to pause, reflect, and listen to our deeper inner experience. This process empowers us to act with greater interior freedom, guided by our values rather than being driven by fear, social expectations, or the desire for approval. A key element of this practice is responsibility. Discernment helps us recognize that our choices have consequences, shaping not only our own lives, but also affecting the people around us. Trust in God in this context doesn't replace personal responsibility. It strengthens and informs it, guiding our actions toward greater love and service. Ultimately, discernment supports a balanced life where true freedom and faithful commitment can beautifully coexist. In our modern world, a world defined by its frantic pace, constant connectivity, and endless distractions, Ignatian discernment offers a powerful countercultural path. It champions silence, deep reflection, and intentional decision-making in a culture that rewards noise, speed, and reactivity. It is an invitation to go deeper beneath the surface-level chaos. For this reason, Ignatian principles are widely used today in leadership development, business ethics, and education. They promote the essential qualities of a good leader: profound self-awareness, a strong ethical compass, and the capacity for thoughtful, value-driven action. Many organizations and institutions apply these ideas to help leaders make decisions rooted in long-term purpose, rather than short-term gains. The enduring relevance of Ignatian spirituality lies in its profound realism. It fully acknowledges the messiness and complexity of human life while offering practical, time-tested tools for navigating our modern world with depth, purpose, and grace. In the end, living a discerning life is not about mastering a technique. It is a lifelong journey and a continuous practice. It's about cultivating a habit of the heart. Over time, by regularly and honestly reflecting on our inner experiences, our consolations and our desolations, we become more attuned to what brings us lasting meaning, peace, and joy. This heightened awareness naturally fosters personal growth, emotional maturity, and healthier, more loving relationships. At its very core, Ignatian spirituality extends a beautiful and life-changing invitation to seek and find God as presence in all things, not by withdrawing from the world, but by engaging it more fully, with greater intention, clarity, and an ever-deepening love. Thank you for joining us at Heart of Catholicism. May we all learn to listen to the gentle whispers of God in our hearts and walk a path of peace and purpose.